Hello and welcome to the evolution of HR tech by 10x Psychology Limited. My name is Oliver Anderson. I'm the CEO of 10x. Welcome. We were founded about 2 years ago by Professor Peter Saville, and what 10x does is we try to significantly improve people performance in the workplace through insight, science, and technology. So we help organizations such as yourselves enhance the performance of their people by improving selection, helping to realize their potential, enhancing employee experience and well-being, all with performance at the center by applying technology-based solutions to these issues. What I'm going to be talking about today is basically the evolution of HR tech and where 10x is hoping to take it, among other people. So if you were to believe the hype in early 2020, essentially robots and automation was coming to take all our jobs, even those of us that work in HR. And whilst there have been some really significant advances, I think the future is a little further away. What is really, really exciting, though, is the technology being developed that essentially augments people's decisions right now. We've got a lot of technology happening that's really, really helping people make decisions in the workplace. And it's really human-friendly technology. It's essentially really helping humans make better decisions in the workplace. And the early adopters are reaping rewards over their competitors. But hasn't that always been the case with HR tech? Well, as we take a little walk down memory lane, we actually find that probably has been the case. So pre-1990, all the early technology was really about automating functions of HR. So you've just seen in the 50s and 60s, payroll automation, 1987 there, PeopleSoft, the first purpose-built HRIS was released. It looks a little bit like this. So you can see there's been huge advances in computing, especially some of the user interface elements. But in itself, still probably workable today here, collecting people data and allowing those elements of taking it from personnel files and putting it onto a computer-based system. In the 90s, we saw significant development with the onset of the World Wide Web, which actually just a massive, massive change. So it enabled emails that they weren't just internal, they were external, websites to advertise your company and advertise jobs. And actually that was a significant element. If you think about who benefits from these tech advancements, and here's one that, you know, organizations were able to put their jobs online. They didn't have to advertise in local newspapers or national newspapers at massive expense. They could have it on their own website, use others such as monster.com for those elements. And who benefit? Well, it benefits them. They're able, a bigger talent pool to get it out, but you've also benefited the individual there. The individual is able to see more jobs over a wider area and post their CVs for being considered for those jobs. You saw the first intranet bill, ATSs, that sort of stuff, but they didn't always look fantastic. So this is monster.com. I'm not sure you get away with a website looking like that these days, especially recruitment. As you can see, busy graphics, busy website, got a sponsorship, 55,000 job opportunities there. So it was a significant big business at the time, but I'm not sure we'd trust a website like that. So again, huge advances, look and feel, and how we interact with these types of sort of HR technological advances. In the 2000s, further intranet development, further self-service, another one, a great one. So you can see there with that sort of HR tech development, helps the organization gather information really easy. You push that on to the individual, not yourself gathering that information. So it's freed up your staff to concentrate on furthermore transformational elements than transactional. But you've also pushed it to the employee to own their own data, to update self-service elements. You saw further advances on other HR websites as well as we developed out. In the 2010s, you saw further HR portals, learning management systems came up in the early 2010s. and maybe a bit before, performance management and feedback tools, and then analytic dashboards towards the end. Fantastic analytic dashboards started to be created, certainly employee engagement. It took it away from a consultancy type model and more into organizations owning their own data or owning the action plans, in real time. Fantastic advances. Really, lots more integration and development there. So where are we going to go in the future? Well, I think we can look at the past, and actually that can really help us with how the future is going to be. So what are the issues of today? I didn't start with COVID. I thought I'd leave that to the last. Productivity was the first one I was going to talk about. And pre-COVID, huge flattening of any kind of growth. The trend is really, really flat since 2007. As you can see there, the trend went down a bit and then it kind of flattened, barely increasing. So this is some data from ONS from December 2019, so pre-COVID. And you can see a real flattening of the productivity in the United Kingdom, a real problem. Other elements were well-being. So well-being was a problem even before COVID, of people trying to do more with less because of the financial crash in 2007. People trying to do more with less, burnout, stress on the rise, presenteeism on the rise as well. Making people very time poor. Always on culture, technology had really not helped that. Always on culture, people having to be available 24/7. Trying to do more with less since 2007. And then obviously COVID hit, and it kind of actually has impacted all of those top three elements. It's made productivity go down, well-being, further anxiety and stress, further time poor issues, maybe not. Some people working from home have more time for home and work. Others, there's a blurring of those lines. So it really depends on a per person basis. But what COVID really has done has created massively dispersed teams, and dispersed teams that stick, if that makes sense. So they're not necessarily coming in once or twice a week, they are constantly dispersed. And we've seen how technology has already bridged that gap. So very quickly plug that gap, look for, and in unintended ways. So we've got chatbots and nudges and messages, making people more informed. Huge amounts of online video and collaboration tools. I'm on one now, on Zoom, other people on Teams. Absolutely enables people to continue to communicate, talk, collaborate to some extent. But does it really help productivity? Is there more that can be done? Well, I think that absolutely is. And it's more about augmenting analytics tools is where I see HR technology moving. So it's not necessarily automating people's roles. There will be some of that, and there's some in what I'm about to say going forward, but it's more about augmenting. It's data-driven to provide insights and then augmenting people's decisions from that. So it's insights and interventions to support, develop, engage. You might nudge people to take up coaching and interventions and really try and drive that change in your organization. So what does it look like? It looks like feedback tools, whether that's one-to-ones, 180s, 360s, all at the point of need. It's about communications being timely to enact change, to support the decision trying to be made by HR or managers in organizations. It's recommendations. It's like on Netflix, what to watch. These are recommendations about how to intervene, how to train, how to develop tasks, skills, behaviors, and also questions. So auto analytics and chatbots in questions, that's more automation. So that's actually making those elements not necessarily the remit of HR, but actually bots to do that. And again, freeing up HR to do more of the transformational elements. And I think that's the real key point. It doesn't affect jobs in terms of removing them completely, but it changes jobs. So automation and augmentation are there to skill change. So important work still exists, but the automation, the augmentation can be done on elements of HR's job now, and then that frees up HR to do more. So some of the ones we were talking about, self-service, HRIS, that sort of stuff, all on the cloud. What that's done is freed up transactional elements to be much more efficient, and then give HR the ability to do more transformational elements around change, behavior change, and so forth. So what is the focus of some of this augmentation? Well, for me, it's the focus has to be about performance and productivity. It's all linked up. It's about timely decision making, high quality decision making, empowering individuals then to make those decisions, and work related interventions, all working at teams, the management of the teams, the engagement of the teams, the well-being, and then their development. So it's all about working on performance and productivity. How do we do more with less? How do we innovate fast? How do we collaborate? How do we motivate dispersed teams? Well, you can do that via a cloud, or with performance being that goal. So what does it look like? So let's pick development, and I'll take you through a development answer of what we're doing at 10x Psychology, and others are doing something similar. But this is what we're doing at 10x to really land development. And of course, it can be applied to engagement and well-being and other elements within the talent life cycle. So what we're talking about here is trying to create development that sticks, really impactful development that creates behavioral change. Well, how we're doing that really then is looking at the neuroscience of learning. Really important stuff. So we're not talking about technical skills. So it's not about a technical skill which you haven't got, so you go and get, you want to learn about Excel, so you go online, find Microsoft training, sign up, do it, delivered, done. You've learned some skills. This is about behavioral training. So this is really intrinsic behaviors, how you interact with people. It's the bit that Google leaves behind. You can't find this sort of stuff on Google. So how do you make behavioral changes that will significantly impact your organization's performance and development? Neuroscience holds the key. So what is the current picture? Well, the current picture is like this. So identification. So this is about finding out what the organization needs to train. And this is very much around an organization focusing on a training needs analysis, or that individual seeks out training by their manager or self-referral or an L&D portal, something like that. So training needs analysis, very subjective, not really necessarily developed out. Development, what does that look? Loads of options, loads of resources. Let's have a page of links. Let's have a page of content, making it novel, make it fun. The experience is either classroom or on the screen. So there's an expert there that either puts that content together, and that's fantastic, or there's a classroom based, and the energy of the training creates that impact element, which you're looking at the bottom. So it's about the material or the impact of the trainer. So that's the current practice in a lot of organizations. The future can be very, very different. And this is something that we are working on at 10x significantly. So first bit is about identification of training. So that can be automated. That doesn't even have to be augmented. That can be significantly automated. So how we do that at 10x, we allow staff to take psychometrics, surveys, and we use those to essentially give us a data-driven view of the whole of an organization and an individual. So we get team level and organization level pictures of what are people's strengths, what are their weaknesses. But ultimately, we're actually able to find out what is driving performance in that organization. So instead of a strengths-based approach, developing strengths to be even better or working on weaknesses to be more well-rounded, we're actually starting to focus on what does the data say? If I develop this, what would I get, where would I get the biggest performance improvement from? So it's understanding that organizational context, higher level, but supplying it at an individual level to get that growth out of the individual, and obviously the collective wins too. So not too dissimilar from all that HR tech that we were looking at earlier around that individual focus, but organization gain as well. So this is all driven by analytics, all then driving notifications to get take up of training. Another big element of the neuroscience toolkit is about the development itself and what that means, the development of the content and how it links together. So we all learn by connections. It's a biological element. The stronger the connections, the stronger we grow and have new experiences. So I heard it described to me like a house. You put in the foundations, put in the walls, put in the roof. Don't put the roof in first, falls to the floor. So it's much more about how do we connect these elements. If you have an organizational framework, a skills framework, behavioral framework, you can do this. And you can certainly do it not just through the model that you've built, but through the stats of this. If you understand how different parts of your capability framework work together, you can create an incredible system of organizing that information. So really organizing that information and the relationships between them. So if you know that an individual should develop their collaboration, then that really fosters and links to team working skills, conversational skills, understanding others' skills. Joins all up, you're building huge connectors on those skills, you're getting compound interest, a bit like an ISA from these sort of development interventions. That learning map is then fully connected, fully creating those connections at that biological level. Another element of the neuroscience toolkit is around experience. So this model here, AGSE, is all about, it's not automation, this is more about augmentation, it's about quality design, about what works. You're trying to create an environment for learners to promote discovery and assimilate those skills, behavioral change, if you will. Now, through measurement, L&D has got a really good understanding of this now, where before they didn't. Like before, it was the hero was the content, the hero was the trainer, and now we're really talking about something very, very different. So the A stands for attention. This is the focus, and what a lot of research says is actually that focus lasts about 10, 15 minutes at most. So not the hour-long, not the day-long courses, not the week-long courses, 15 minutes at most, allowing time for reflection for the learner, for the brain not to be saturated really as well. Generation is the G. That is all to do with the connections and the material. So it's all those network elements I was talking about earlier. Building those networks builds a really key picture. The S is for spacing. I mentioned it earlier in terms of reflection. This is absolutely key. So there's been lots of experiments out there of people doing training. So like an hour-long training, no stop, versus 15 minutes, go and play a game of darts, come back, do more, 15 minutes more. The second group absolutely retains far more information. Spaced learning, given the time for the brain to work that all out, reflect, understand, and come back. And emotions is the E. So this, it needs to be high for the learning to stick. So presentations, not necessarily the best, but elements that create an aha moment where someone has a connection to that material, whatever that material be, tend to stick more in people's minds, and then thus recall is easier. There's a little bit of research from the Neuro Leadership Institute about this model across different learning modes. Really, really interesting element. So over left-hand side, face-to-face training, you can see kind of middle agnostic around attention, high on connections, high on emotion, very low on spacing because it's face-to-face. It can be an hour long, it can be a day long, hard to scale as well, as you can see there. Webinars, pretty low on attention. They can be quite long. Pretty low on emotion as well because it's one-sided. It's a person talking to you on a webinar, not necessarily about you or your organization. But good to cost, right? Easy to scale out. Decent to scale out. E-learning in the middle there. So loads of people go for e-learning, right? I mean, it's incredibly popular as digital is here, as technology is here. Push all your learning digital, right? It's easier to do. People can read it and consume it whenever they like. Really bad for attention because it's long, often. Bad connection because people pick just whatever they want. So there's a lack of connections there. Emotion, incredibly lacking in that element. It's very much read and take a test. So low cost though, compared, so easy to scale. You can see why vendors put together a lot of e-learning. Far right, gaming, incredibly attention, short, sharp, emotive, spaced, very costly though. The best of the best, second from right, coaching, as you can see, incredibly high on the attention level because it's usually short, sharp, great connections because you're talking about an individual and you're connecting the bits to pieces. Emotional, it's all about me with the coach, and it's spaced. You might do it once a week, once a month with your coach, but costly because it's one-to-one human interaction, hard to scale. Where we are focusing our attention from 10x, others may be doing this too, is to create scalable and low-cost coaching to nudge some of these skills into being developed, some of these behavioral skills. So it's really about trying to create massive impact, designing insight to generate habit change. It's the strength of those insights that correlate to the behavior change. So we're trying to create aha moments in our content, in our coaching. So we give participants a little nugget about what they're trying to learn, take them through some coaching questions, trying to get them to think outside the box, then going getting feedback, which is the emotion part, which is actually the feedback is socializing it. If you're socializing it, it makes it more robust, you store knowledge, you get that impact. And we're trying to create that aha moment that actually creates that connection and creates the embedding of the learning. So how are we doing that? We're making it simple, fast, spaced, social, doing that feedback element, and insightful. It's short, 5 minutes max. Total going through some of this stuff is about 15 minutes, but it's 5 minutes of reading the content and asking for some feedback feed, waiting for that feedback to come in, reflecting upon that. So it's intensive, but it's high, short, sharp, intensive work, regular. We're nudging people to take advantage of these insights and go and get this sort of insightful coaching on behavioral elements. But it's social, like I said, we're incorporating the organization and how we're getting the feedback and the skills to land it stronger, make it easier to recall and act upon. So what we're really doing is delivering high impact virtual events in short repeated bursts. This is not training. This is short, sharp, effective coaching nuggets, boosts as we call them in 10X, that are getting people to try and learn behavioral changes and sort of chipping away at it. It's not necessarily training, it's coaching. And as we've seen, it's far better from a neuroscience point of view of trying to actually get training to stick, insight to stick. So does it work with all the problems that exist today? Well, yes. And like I said, we're not the only ones doing micro-learning or coaching. And these are the reasons why. People with the productivity, you need to be delivering elements that are going to help productivity. And that's natural with this development elements. But there's also other things like people's employee experience, people's well-being. Again, training in this way or insightful interventions in this way bring about behavioral change, and they can only be a good thing for people's performance. So you can impact well-being, engagement exactly the same way as I've just been through with these development insights. Does it help people who are time poor? Absolutely. It's not a course going away for a week. It's not a day-long course. It's not an hour-long course or half an hour of e-learning. We're talking bite-sized chunks with space for reflection and to go again and go again. Is it useful in the COVID time? Well, absolutely. It focuses, we focus on experience, we focus on well-being, we focus on skills development. But where it really comes into its own is the element of dispersed teams. You're still able to interact as a team and interact with your manager via these and wider with the feedback feed to your whole organization. Really helps dispersed teams come together and learn together and develop together. So just a summary of the future. So for me, the future is more automation, more augmentation. So it's just like the past. But the technology is going to automate that data-led insight. That's the bit that technology is doing. It is automating, whether it's engagement dashboards, whether it's what I was talking about, what we're doing at 10X. We're able to automate what works. What do you need to work on to improve, whether that be engagement, well-being, or skills? And then that augments people's decisions. Well, what do I take up to develop? And that technology is then enabling fast, self-paced interventions to unlock productivity. As always, well, who benefits? Well, as we saw with all that previous HR tech, I think it's both the individual and the organizations. The organization gets to understand what works in its organization, what isn't, what people are motivated by, what are big ticket well-being interventions, all with that productivity slant. Of course, this is detailed enough down to the individual level that it engages the individual. It's emotional enough to connect with the individual and make a true difference to them. And of course, them growing, them developing, them feeling more engaged and having their well-being looked after is only good for organizational and team performance. And just like those early technology changes in the HR tech field, the early adopters were the ones that had the significant advantage over their competition. This is going to be no different. Early adopters are going to have a great competitive advantage in developing out productivity gains through this more holistic model, looking across an organization all the way down into individuals. Thank you so much for listening. That is the end of the talk. You can see up on that slide details of where we exist in Guildford. You can also say telephone number and email address. If you've got any questions about anything you heard today, please contact us on these details. Or if you want to see a demonstration of our models across hire, predictive hire, or optimized, that looks at how we optimize teams, development, engagement, and well-being, then please use those details below. Thank you very much and have a good day.